Hello and welcome. My name is Stephen Knight. The topic of today's session is all about e-signatures, and we'll be looking at e-signatures with DocuSign and eSign so we can compare the pros and cons. Thank you for your attention. Okay, now on to e-signatures. So just a quick overview of the plan. We're going to have a look in section 1. Acrobat DC Professional, looking at it and SharePoint, where we're going to save a document as we turn it into a PDF into a SharePoint library, looking at how the process handles saving, checkout and metadata. Looking at this first because we've got to get our document into a SharePoint library before we trigger the rest of the process. Part 2, section 2, we'll have a look at from Adobe DC, Acrobat DC, looking at send for signature. We'll go through the whole process of send for signature. We'll look at how it uses the document cloud service, which is part of your Acrobat DC subscription, and we'll have a look at reports, the reports you get at the end of the process, the paper trail if you like. So we'll see how this works and how it does or doesn't tie back into SharePoint, and this save my comments till we get a bit further in. Then we'll have a look at the eSign tool from online, from Adobe's website service, which I think just gives you a nicer access to a few of the features, so you may prefer to use it from that approach. Then we'll have a look at DocuSign. We'll have a look at actually running it from SharePoint Online. Now we'll already have installed it. I'm actually working with the free trial DocuSign that you can get, where you get 3 documents you can send off. So we'll use one of those goes if you like to demonstrate this. We'll have a look at how it saves the results back into the SharePoint library. It's a key point here. And we'll have a look at the reports that we get from the process, and we'll have a look at just a quick discussion of the two in comparison, some points you might need to think about. Now, I should point out I've got access to the eSign service because I have a subscription to Acrobat DC, which gives you a basic version of the service. You can subscribe to the eSign service directly at a personal, professional or corporate level. There's different rates. It starts at about $9. Similarly for DocuSign, I'm using the trial version, and there are moderately priced subscription levels for that as well. So they're both subscription services. DocuSign actually has an app for Office 365 for SharePoint Online, which I've actually already installed, which just very nicely allows you to tie this in with your library. So for this demonstration purposes, we're assuming the app's been set up. Okay, so let's make a start. So we have a document in Word. We're ready to convert it. So I've gone to the Acrobat tab, although you could do this using the built-in Acrobat conversion functionality that Office now has. But I've got Acrobat Professional, so I've got the additional toolbar. I'll take advantage of it. So I've already set my preferences where I'm going to go with the smallest file size, and I'm going to create a PDF. And it's having a little think, and we're actually in the SharePoint library that I actually want to save this into, and I'll just give this, just tweaking the name because I'm going to have multiple copies of this to work with. I want it to be a PDF, and I'll save the result. So what we should see in a moment is our document in Adobe Acrobat Professional DC, to give it its full name. So we now have the document in Acrobat DC. We've converted it Now, I want to just do the usual checks that I would do here, where I'll go to the File tab and Document Properties, or the File menu and Document Properties. We could put some basic metadata in our document. We've got room for subject and other information here. Now, so this is just all standard Acrobat functionality, all things that we would do. Just to give you a quick look at the document, we've got some people we need initialing it, we've got some managers that we'll need to get them to sign it, and so yes, we need initials and we'll need signatures, basically, from an admin leader and a manager. Now, I just want to finish off looking at how this interacts with, and now it's come up and said, right, we notice that the SharePoint library this is going into has some metadata. So we've got here the classic SharePoint metadata of title, which I'll just complete there. I've got a course code, which is required metadata, and this is just coming from a lookup or a drop-down list. So maybe this document relates to a particular course code. And I've actually added a taxonomy to my SharePoint site now, so I now can use that taxonomy to set some keywords. And here we go. So it's now giving me a chance to actually select some keywords here from the preloaded structured taxonomy. So I could choose the product or the client or whatever it might be that this might be to do with. And this is actually a proposal, and I could add that in as metadata. And I've actually got this set up that I could allow multiple metadata fields that I'm adding to it, so classify it in different ways. So I've added some metadata through my structured keywords through my taxonomy here, so it's picked that up there, and we're ready to go. Okay, now, so we've got our document in SharePoint. I'm just going to close it down. So File, Close, just to see one last little bit of interaction. So we've got checkout happening here, so I need to check it back in, and I might say this is ready for signing. Okay, so far so good. Let's have a look at this from SharePoint, and then we'll now get into our send for signature. Just before I get to send for signature, the eagle-eyed amongst you will have spotted that when we were using the taxonomy in step 1, it only let me record one term from the taxonomy. That's actually not Acrobat doing that. That was because some silly person, being me, added the taxonomy, added the column to the library and didn't tick in the settings allow multiple values. So it is possible to record multiple values. Now, moving on, what we want to have a look at now is using send for signature. Now, we've got it over here on the right in the tools panel, or alternatively I can go to the tools tab. And one of the things I like about Acrobat DC is it's organized pretty much everything it can do for you right here. So we're going to use send for signature to send this document to some people to get them to review it and sign it in the appropriate place. So we'll have a look at how we actually manage that. If you're doing this with a form, and it's a form that you've modified or developed in Acrobat Professional DC, you can actually indicate in signature fields which one's for the first signer, which areas for the second signer, if people have to work their way down a form. But in this case, we're looking at a document, and so we'll work with our document that we need people to approve our proposal. So I've got send for signature here. Let's open that up, and it's attached the document that we have already created, and I'm now going to go into ready for send. So this is all through the desktop Acrobat DC, Acrobat Professional in this case. Okay, so we now get to indicate who this is actually going to. So I'm going to send this to myself, just wearing my many multiple personalities. So this part of the process, the document's merely hosted in SharePoint, although that will change. In fact, it's already changed in a sense. I will talk more about that, and we'll have this go to a second person, and it's remembering my second person. Now this is a sequence. It's actually going to go to person 1, then to person 2. And we can put comments in here for people. Upload complete is saying this has gone to the document library. So this is actually in, if I click document library there and scroll down, this is not in SharePoint. This is in the document cloud service that Acrobat, Adobe provide, as part of your Acrobat subscription and as part of the eSign service if you're getting access to it that way. Now, this for small business, very, very handy, because we've got a cloud service that we can use to coordinate our signatures, and you're paying for it as part of your subscription. The downside is this has moved this outside of our SharePoint library. And that, I think, is something that, particularly for larger organisations where you've got security issues that outweigh the convenience, then, or you may have, for some government organisations particularly, issues where you need to be sure your content's stored in Australia. So that would be something you would need to check. Is the Australian-based document cloud Australian-based or not? I know with Office 365 they've done a whole process recently of moving sites that are Australian sites to Australian-based hosting so that they can meet the necessary requirements for keeping data in the country. So those are the sorts of things you'll have to research. For small and medium business, just the ability to get stuff electronically signed is going to be so powerful that I think it'll overweigh the possible security issues. Remembering, of course, that you manage this document cloud space yourself, and you could archive the files. In fact, there are links offered in the email process that you get at the end that we'll see where you can download a file. So you could use Document Cloud to run the process and then back up the file into SharePoint yourself and delete it at the end. Anyway, let's see how this works. So we've got our document selected. I'll just cancel from there. We could attach additional documents. They don't have to be PDFs either. I've just used a PDF because that's probably the natural format for this, but they don't have to be PDFs. Let's send it off, and that's been sent. And if I click manage this document, now this will take me out online effectively, where we get to see the service here online, and we can see the history of previous files we've worked with and bring them up and review them or whatever we might need to do. So we'll be revisiting this a little bit later, because this ability you can send from here, and I just think the process might be a bit tidier if you do send from here, but I'll let you draw your own conclusions. Now, let me go and check my email, because I can hear that binging in the back. So what we're seeing now is the email where I have a link. So it's saying that this person has sent this to me. I have a link where I can go and review the document, and then after I sign it, it will then go on to the next person who will then finalise the process. If I need to forward it, I've got options there, but let's go click here to review. And it brings it up. So I'm now online, and I'm now in the document cloud. Now, I now need to look at actually signing this document. So let's have a look at how we do that. Alrighty, so let's process this document and sign it. Now, a little snag here is I wasn't able to pre-position requests for initials. When we actually drive this from the cloud-based tool, we can actually put some initials in here. So you're just giving you a quick cook's tour. We do have alternative actions where maybe I'm not the best person, or I will not e-sign it because I want to put my physical signature on this, put it in an envelope, tie it to the leg of a carrier pigeon and send it through. So as we come down, you'll notice it's added a couple of blocks for our two signers. So this is our first signer where it's looking for information about this person. Now, I've actually used the service before as Stephen Knight, so it knows I'm a trainer and it knows who I work for. So I can go in here and I can now apply my signature, and I could be particularly formal if I needed to be, and it will suggest. Or if I was on a tablet, and there's a tablet app, there's an Android tablet app for signing that's a freebie that you can get that ties in with all of this, and there's an iOS for your iPad devices tablet app for signing as well, which I think particularly on the iPad would be a lovely experience, because I do find just even with your finger you can draw really nicely. Android as well with the more modern tablets. My old Android tablet's a bit steam powered, so it's not so good for signing things, or more correctly, it's not so good for drawing, but I could certainly have a go. So I'm going to go back here to just typing my name, and I'll just, so let's imagine I'm just going to use my hypothetical full name, and so I'm now signing this. My IP address, the email address it went to, all of this is being tracked, so that we've got some evidence afterwards that people said that people are who they said they are. I could adjust company names or my role here. So I might be, in this particular case, I'm wearing my team leader hat, so I'll put that in there. So I've done my bit. It's got a time and date stamp there for us, and I can click to sign that, and it's now going to process it and move it on to the next person. Now, I have an opportunity here to download a copy where I can keep a copy of that, or I can get one at the end of the process, which probably makes a bit more sense, but it's now done. So let's have a look at the next. Now, I won't spend too long on this because you've seen the process. Something I didn't show you before though is I can click the little next link to take me down to my next set of required fields. I can see who signed it there before, and then I click to sign it myself, and this is one of my many personalities here, so I'll just sign that and apply it. And Just complete the necessary information. Now, the really interesting thing to see from this, and why I got it to do 2 rather than 1, is we'll see it tracking IP addresses and email addresses and times and dates and the whole thing, which is very, very nice. Also, we've got terms and conditions down the bottom here, and disclosure, so that people can click that if they wish and see all the terms and conditions that are part of this using the service. I'll leave you to read those for homework. Worth reading though, I think, or somebody in your organisation should. Again, at the end of the process I get the option to download a copy, but what I really want to see is what's the end result of all of this. What do I see as me, the initiator? So let's have a look at the end result that we actually get here. We get a nice email from Document Cloud, from the eSign services, basically telling us, look, attached is a final copy. This is gone out to Stephen Wilton Knight, Stephen Hiram Knight and Stephen Knight. So all the participants got a copy of this, and they actually have it here as an attachment. And I'll open up the attachment and give you a little look at that. So we've got our attachment there, and you'll notice we've got the ability to verify signatures through the signature panel, and we can see the signatures that were applied and date and time stamps, or date stamps at least, as when they were signed. And this is where the goodness comes in, is on the next page here, where it's given us a little report with a transaction ID that you can use to look this up afterwards. So if you think somebody's doctored this page, which is actually doable, you could go in and edit this page in Acrobat Professional with a little bit of jiggery pokery. You could edit it, but this is the code which, if you were concerned about the legitimacy of it, you can actually search for documents using that code in online, and it will bring up the report. In fact, it brings up this document and this report. So if you thought it had been doctored, you could search for that, and then if you weren't bringing it up as a result, then you would have grounds for being a bit suspicious perhaps. But I'll just show you what it gives us here. So we see IP addresses of the people involved. Now, I've been a little bit slack in demonstrating this in the interest of time, mostly at my end. What I really should have done is, from a different device, done the processing for Stephen Wilton Knight, for example, from a different device. So you would see different IP addresses. Also, just of note to Australian users, we're actually seeing that's an American time zone there. So you would need to convert that back to the relevant Australian or other time zone. But we can see that's the result. Everyone's gone through and signed it at the appropriate point. I can also bring up the signature panel here at the top, and it's just giving me some information about the signatures, and the Adobe EchoSign service is in the signature path for this, which again, that's something that you may wish to have a look at, so that if you're seeing certificate issuing authorities there that you don't recognise, or something you suspect might be homemade, again, that's giving you a little bit of information that you can have a look at there, just to give you an idea of, can I rely on this or not. Now, both Adobe with eSign and the DocuSign service have some articles that you can read about should we be accepting electronic signatures, which I will leave you to read that for homework. But just as a small business, okay, I have to occasionally sign contracts with training providers, and I actually this afternoon have to go digging through my paperwork because I need to bring up a contract just to check, because we had a bit of backwards and forwards over rates, just to check what rates were actually agreed, so that on an upcoming job I'm actually charging the right amount, because it's not good to charge people too much. Now, because I'm a small business and a one-man band, this means I've got to sort through my paperwork, where if I could just be searching Document Cloud or bring this up in my email, because I've been sent a copy of the final document, where what I've got is I've got sort of progressive copies of things as physical copies. So I've got a copy of the, if I had a copy of the final document through this process, I can be sure that what I'm looking at is the one that everybody signed and pull the rates off that, and it would be a much faster process than me going digging through bits of piles of paper. So I can see a lot of productivity advantages. Also, at the moment, we've got lots of people signing documents and faxing them through. And fax is giving you really nothing. You could be cutting and pasting images of signatures. I just see this technology for that sort of document. I think it's got advantages. But as I said, do read the material that the services provide, where they talk about whether this stuff is legally binding and so on. So I don't play a lawyer on TV, so my legal opinions are worth absolutely bubkus, but what I would be suggesting to you is just I can see productivity advantages to this, and it's a technology whose time has come, I believe. Now, next little segment, I want to look at this from the perspective of the online service, just so we can see what's actually possible there. I think you'll find the online version of eSign is just a little bit nicer in that initial stage. In the next section, we'll have a look at eSign online, which you will find a more flexible, I think, interface for working with this process, particularly with the initial setting up before you actually send out for signatures. And now, a word from our sponsors. Right, just a very quick look now at the eSign online interface, which, as I said, I think gives you a slightly more effective interface. So what I've done here already is upload the actual document. So there's an area here that we can, at the bottom left, where you can upload, you can drag and drop. So I just dragged and dropped. But you can also select from your document cloud library, from Google Drive, or from an assortment of other popular services. Dropbox would be being the biggie there. Interestingly, you'll notice not from Office 365, and this really cries out for an Office 365 app to tie this in with eSign in the same way as there is with DocuSign. So we can nominate a range of individuals, we can have them approve in any order, or if we're processing something where we've got delegations or it's important people see something in sequence, we can do it by the order entered. There is the ability for us to say, right, I need to sign this first or last, so we get to choose. Maybe we've got to sign it to start trigger a process, or maybe we're the last, so you get to choose. We'll go, now we can go by email delivery. We can also say email delivery and you must know a password, and we can set passwords to be able to open the signed PDF. We have the ability to put, again, custom text in here as well. Now what I am going to choose is that I do want to preview and position for signatures and look at other form fields, because there's some useful content here. And if I click next, it wants a recipient. Okay. And I'll add a recipient. Actually, I'll add two because it will facilitate what I'm about to do. So I've got two different recipients for the purposes of this exercise. I've said preview at the bottom. Now we're in our document in the eSign service. We are now looking at positioning for initials that we might want to get and signatures, and what our options are with other information. Now the first thing we need to do is choose the participant. So I'm looking at my first participant here. And I'm saying, right, what do I need from my first participant? Well, I might want some initials, maybe they're the admin manager. And at the bottom of the document, I want a signature block from them that gives me full details about who they are. Now that I've set that up, I now go back and say, right, for the second major participant, I want their initials in here, and I want at the bottom, I want a signature block maybe, or maybe for these people I just need a signature, because maybe one's external and one's in-house. We just need a signature for the in-house one. But also I could say, look, I don't want a whole signature block, but I will get your title for this second person. Now I have the ability to add extra fields in here if I needed to collect additional information. Maybe I needed a box for capturing reasons for decision, then I could drop a text field in here. So I can see uses for all of that. So I've added those extra fields in there. I'll save this back into the document library with the changes, and then we'll go next. And so that's ready to go. It's on its way. And now all the key players are going to get this particular copy of the document. This is where I could be signing it if I was going to be signing it. But what I'm going to do at this point is I'm actually going to log out of this in a moment, because we've seen this process already. It's the same emails and things that are generated. So that's an overview of eSign. Now, the connection there with SharePoint, really the only connection, is we initially uploaded a PDF into SharePoint to see how that worked. There's no real integration. At the end, you would be needing to make sure you download that copy of the document with the audit trail into your SharePoint library, so you've got that as perhaps as a record. You could declare it as a record and keep it longer term. So very, very useful. but no real connection back into SharePoint. So at the end, we would need to save the signed result and that audit trail back into your SharePoint library so that we've got that there, perhaps declaring it as a record, so that ultimately it winds up in the record center in your SharePoint site. So that's it for eSign for the moment, and the next little tutorial, which I'll split into a separate recording, is going to look at similar functionality in DocuSign.